So yeah, we've been, as Anand said, we've been hard at work, albeit now all remotely. And this is really obviously something we've been thinking pretty hard about. A lot of our users, obviously, of the platform, many of those users are no longer in the workplace. Some are, obviously manufacturing is still critical. Healthcare continues to be critical. So we still have, a number of folks there, but obviously as we have more and more people that are outside the traditional workplace, now we have this sort of work wherever, right? It used to be work from home, work from the office or the third space. Now it's really work from wherever. A lot of this has been trying to sort of understand, well, what are the use cases? Again, put ourselves back into the network engineer's role and think about, how do you support users from home? How do you support users in the enterprise while you're at home? How do you do some troubleshooting and things like that? What are some of the data maybe that we have that perhaps could facilitate some return to campus or return to workplace initiatives? So, we're really, thinking about how do we support users really regardless where they are. And it's pretty important for us to be able to take that data, put it back into that AI and baseline normalcy, right? What is the normal sort of in your environment, despite the fact that everything else is really not normal anymore. So we'll go through a couple of use cases. The first is COVID response use cases, and pretty much early on, we got asked very quickly about, hey, can you guys help us with either contact tracing or leveraging Wi-Fi data? And it's something that as we looked at the platform and said, this is okay, how do we reshift sort of our mindset around user population intelligence? And obviously a lot of folks thought about this, but we worked with a number of our customers and came up with a couple of good use cases. I think the most competent one right now is probably the real-time occupancy reporting, looking at buildings, floors, or really sort of custom areas. And I think that's one that's been sort of interesting is if we think of hotspots in areas, maybe we've got like a lecture hall or a conference room or maybe a large meeting space, and we need to make sure that we're not exceeding density in that area. Voyance can take that data and aggregate it just into that small grouping and report back on that data. Tracing and pathing of devices. Certainly, we've talked about contact tracing. That's a fairly controversial subject so far. But, there's still a fair amount of use in sort of the generalized data. And you can sort of see a little bit of the screenshot down on the bottom, looking at some of our map data. And that's real-time roaming data that's overlaid on that. This happens to be a number of users, and we can sort of see the concentrations of where folks are. That's been important in thinking about cleaning and occupancy and whatnot. So an area that I think is definitely, something that we'll all be concerned about. The next one is really, remote troubleshooting. And it's something that I think as we get closer, both from a school perspective, but as reopening of workplaces, there's a lot of talk about how do we keep groups or pods of users separate from others. So if there are COVID breakouts or whatever, we're minimizing the amount of people or impact on that. And one area that I've gotten a lot of ask about is, we've got to keep those engineers at home and we've got to keep them productive. So, leveraging a tool like Voyance with the data and the Wi-Fi data that we have, it's not an exact replacement for, an Ekahau or a NetScout, but, if you can't be in that location, you really don't want to go into the general workforce because you're really just adding, yourself into that area. Voyance can really help, troubleshoot issues almost like you're there. So that's something that's been pretty positive for a lot of our folks. And the big thing is actually taking this data and using it for BI and business intelligence and diagnostics. So to that end, we're really excited to work with Splunk. So Splunk has a program called Global Restart. And if folks are familiar with Splunk, they're started off as sort of a syslog ingester, and now have become so much more. And one of the real powerful features of Splunk have been these dashboards. So how do we take all this data and put it together? They actually reached out to us pretty early on in the interest of having Wi-Fi data. They have a lot of data if they're involved in security, so card swipes, things like that, occupancy sensors. But, could we augment that data with Wi-Fi? And the challenge that they were facing was, a lot of this Wi-Fi data is available either through proprietary means, telemetry or AMON, or it's polling by SNMP or traps and things like that. The advantage that we gave them was we have all this data pre-parsed through an API regardless of vendor. So if you're a multi-vendor location, we've got you covered. And really it was about time to market. How quickly can we implement something like this? So this is pretty cool. Splunk gives you flexible distributed access to data. That's something that in our API, it's sort of all or none. But through Splunk and permissions and things like that, you can take that and use that data to be a little bit more granular, obviously with some of the privacy concerns we have. So this is available soon from Splunk, and it'll be on one of the technology connectors, and I'm sure you'll hear about it. We did do a webinar with those guys, and as these slides become available, the link is on my slide with the access password, of course, from VMware. So encourage you guys to check that out. So Service Desk. Well, this is a feature that I think we have all sort of dreamed about for quite a while. And I do remember it was Lee, and he's like, man, this is just, you guys are adding all this data. It's great, but how do we make it simpler? So one of the things we really wanted to think about was how does a help desk work? How does a NOC work? What are the problems that they face? Certainly, I spent a lot of time, in a university understanding that, but from different industries, so healthcare, enterprise manufacturing. We talked to a ton of people to really understand what are the challenges that they face, and when they troubleshoot something, and how do they escalate that, right? So can they solve the problem? If they can't solve the problem, how do they get it off their desk? And then when they get it off their desk, what does the network engineer actually interact with? So we developed a wizard workflow. It's really the who, what, when, and where of network problems. Problem categories make it easy to classify the type of issue. We show the type of applications that are there, and you can select that in this. And then it goes back and gives you that likely root cause for the issue and the scope of the impact. So this is, plain text, your report at the very end. It allows you to copy and paste that up to an email, and I'll show you guys all this right now. So first demo, let's see how we do. So let's see. All right. I'm going to, of course, I already have this up, but I'll start from our service desk. And
John, I
yes.
just had a question. Do you do any correlation after the fact when you say we found this root cause, and then how do you know that actually was the root cause?
Good question. And Anand, I think, is going to talk a little bit about some of our ability to do that with some enhanced data like Zoom. Sometimes we can and absolutely positively identify that because we have ground truth. We know that they're in a poor coverage area, or we know that the DHCP transaction or something like that was a problem, or we have a radius log that actually says, their password or username and password is wrong, or account is locked. As we think about, additional integrations like with Zoom, Zoom will literally tell us, what was wrong with that particular call, and allows us to go back. So it's a good question, Keith, and absolutely something I think there are areas where we can guess because we see the tea leaves around the problem. And there are other areas where we know we have ground truth, and that root cause is right there. But great question. So let's go ahead and look up a user. So this is the interface, very simple. Let's just say we've got this particular user, and we know as soon as we type it in, we've got two devices that they have in the network. They've got a Mac, they've got an iPhone. In this case, let's say it was the Mac, and they had some Zoom issues. So allows us to just go ahead, click the troubleshoot. We're going to choose the time frame. I'm going to say last week. But we could choose a particular exact date and time. In this case, we're going to look. They said Zoom, so these are the applications that were in use within that time period. We're going to say that's the main issue that we're really looking for, is just the Zoom. So this is going to go back, boom, it immediately finds the problem. This is based off, again, the analytics that are running in the background. So everything is already pre-computed. We know any particular type of issues, down at the client level. So we know for a fact that this user did in fact had poor Zoom performance. And in this particular case, our root cause, and I chose this one for a reason because Anand's going to have more detail on this as we show. So in this particular one, we actually don't see any other issues associated with this particular Zoom. So it's not a Wi-Fi issue. It's not a network issue. It's not a WAN issue, right? So we're not seeing other applications have problems. In this particular case, we think this is just straight Zoom. So there was some issue with Zoom and some latency with the Zoom that was causing problems. We have other root causes or other incidents, right? So we can actually show some additional incidents. We know they had bad Facebook issues. They had some roaming issues. But really the main one around Zoom was really just related to Zoom.
Hey, John.
Go ahead.
This feels, obviously this is constructed very wizard driven. Like, do you have any plans for making this be far more natural language, like where you type in a sentence and then it comes back to you and says, this is what we think you want, instead of prompting people to go sort of step by step by step?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think right now we're sort of focused on this particular piece, but the idea of that, did Jenny have a problem at this time? It's certainly something, that obviously the data is all there, but in this particular case, what we found is more people really wanted this type of workflow. Give me that particular time frame, right? They were comfortable with this particular type of wizard workflow. And so last, this share summary, and this is one that I think is it's really simple, but it's actually pretty cool. This is a complete summary of what the issue was, and it's plain text. It's not formatted. It's formatted with HTML. It's all just straight plain text. And what this allows you to do is literally just copy this and then go over to your notepad and just paste it right in. This gives you everything from the username, host name, MAC address. And that was the big thing. People were just saying, hey, from an escalation perspective, MAC addresses, we never got them. We never got an IP address. We got, the internet was broken, right? In this particular case, we're actually, I think actually this is not quite the one, but I'll paste what I had. The problem reported was application trouble, right? When was the time frame? What other incidents were related to the problem? So this is something that's sort of ready to go, either service now, or just plain old email. We can send this out. So that's pretty exciting. We think that's something that's going to have a big impact on campuses, both as they're either folks are working from home or as they return to campus, and certainly in the enterprise space, same thing. We've heard, NOC users want this type of access to be able to get a quick resolution and quick answers to problems in a not quite as technical interface as what we used to have. All right, so back to presentation. Next thing is the client app. And this is something we're really, really excited about. We've had a client agent that was focused on collecting data, but didn't really give the end user any information about what was going on. So this is really redesigned for enterprise and consumer use. It's designed to sit on your mobile device or on your laptop and give you some real simple red, green, yellow status for internet and Wi-Fi. So for the end user, it allows you to say, hey, is it me or is the internet down? And I can't tell you, in the last 2 weeks, my internet's gone down in the middle of the day 3 or 4 times. I was a little worried that this might not work when that happened. And the first thing I did is I went and looked at this and said, yep, my network was up, my internet was down. It seems really simple. And to you and I, we might just go and ping a couple of internet sites or something like that. Well, this application is going to do it all for you, which is great. Not only that, but it's going to take all this data and it's going to send it back to Voyance and allow us to baseline that data and look for root cause analysis associated with home users, right? So this will collect data from your home network or wherever you may be. It could be, on-prem, it could be at the coffee shop, it could be at your house, it could be, in the dorm, whatever, and allow you to get a better picture of what does that end user look like wherever they are. So this is another data source, if you will.
Just
Go
another
ahead.
quick one. What's the difference between this and your old Nyansa agent?
Sorry if I'm being dense on this. So is this app for an end user to use?
Correct. Yep. This would install on the end user device. So it's optional, right? We've heard some folks want something like this as an option. And especially as we have more people, not on the enterprise, right? And obviously not without a crawler covering them, they want to be able to have some data that they can go back and reference, right? So this application lives in the system tray, either Windows PC or an app on your device. So as we started up, we get some, sort of go from the top down. We have, our device details. And we have some metrics around here. This is really more looking at, hey, is your device healthy? Your hardware itself, right? The next thing we're looking at is your network. So, wherever you are, we're dynamically identifying things like your gateway and the primary means that you're connecting. So if you're connected to via wired or Wi-Fi, we'll figure that out.
I got a quick question. So is this application targeted for the user to actually give you these details when they're reporting trouble, or is this for like a help desk person to, respond to somebody who's put in a ticket?
Sure. I'd say both. The idea is that from a self-help perspective, this is just a great way to say, hey, what's going on, right? Is my network bad? Is my internet bad? Or is VPN, right? So what are the various things? And you can see right now my VPN is bad. That's because I disconnected it prior to jumping on. But it's designed for the end user to get a quick status, hey, are things good or are things bad? But then for the help desk, it's also for them to be able to go back and look at, well, if you're reporting issues, what has your signal to noise ratio been, right? How have your pings to the VPN targets been, right? So those synthetic tests that we run in the background, really to give them a sense of, what are we dealing with here? It also, go ahead.
Sorry, hey, John, let me just add a little bit to that as well, right? So this app is sort of, as you can see, obviously there's a local GUI, and then the end user can kind of self-troubleshoot. But this is also sending data back to the Voyance AI platform, right? Just like our agent did before, except that now we're adding in the back end the ability to do analytics on this data. Oh, your gateway just went bad, John. The ability to do analytics on the back end baseline, as well as correlate between things measured on the device itself, as well as other data sources. So for example, when I talk about the Zoom integration next, I'll talk about the fact that for a work from home user, we can correlate data from the Zoom API directly from the Zoom application, as well as what's being collected on the client application that John is showing, giving you sort of perspective of what's going on with the client device that's not currently on the enterprise network, right? But still allowing enterprise IT, as well as the user themselves, to kind of see it. And just the last thing is, longer term, what we see this sort of app evolving to as well is sort of a mobile app version of Voyance, you could say, in terms of being able to collect data from an enterprise network or from your edge or whatever have you, to give you insight into your network as well, but just sort of scope to just you as a user and not seeing data about other people, obviously.
But ultimately, it's really just designed to sit in your tray and tell you whether either do nothing, you never look at it, and as it sends data back to Voyance, the help desk can help you out, or you can look at it and go, oh yeah, my internet is excellent right now, but maybe it was bad right before, and why was that, right? So we're really excited about this. Something that we expect to launch in the next couple of months. The name Pindrop at this point is not a real name. That's just a code name for the internal product. But something we're pretty excited to share with you guys.